On the Careful Interview segment this week, I'll be speaking with the President of the Nigerian Labour Congress. It tells me why it's important for Nigerians to upskill and reskill in a digital era, and also spoke about the shrinking civic space. It's good to have you on the program.
Thank you very much.
It's been a long time we've had a conversation.
Yeah, exigencies of duty.
Okay, it's the 21st Ring School here in Akwa Ibom, and can you tell us why is it important for training and retraining at this time, and how has NLC been able to sustain this for 2 decades?
Well, thank you very much. If you think education is expensive, you try ignorance. I think one author, probably Ajaero, wrote it. For us to sustain the workers, for us to sustain the labor movement, we must at all times train our people, you know, and therefore the concept of training and retraining, you know, upskilling, you know, is very, very vital. Because of the dynamic nature of our society. The society is changing on a daily basis. You can see that even AI is trying to take over jobs and all that. There was a time we were talking about computer. You know, the fear of computer taking over jobs was in the air until people started adjusting. Most of our members who are using typewriter, you know, started transiting through constant training and retraining. So that is why on a daily basis we continue to train them new skills, new approaches to labor practice. There used to be a time that is all about table banging. The issue of collective bargaining has to do with banging and shouting. But this day, as of today, I can tell you that those on the other side cannot even match the skill of the people on this side. So you need to, you know, continuously train them so that we can meet up with the time, you know. So it's important, and the NLC will continue to do that despite the paucity of funds. You know, we critically established 2 schools, the Harmattan School and the Rain School. What is happening here is the Rain School, and probably between October or August or September we do the Harmattan School. So those 2 schools are critical, and people, if you have not passed through these schools, you know, you won't say you have started in the trade union movement. So it is a way of, you know, impacting on them or reawakening their class consciousness. You know, it's a way of looking at the day and way. You know, you can't run a trade union movement by being right. A conscious trade unionist is usually at the left, and the minimum of it is kind of social democracy. But you must understand the concept, especially the concept that goes with the market, privatization, liberalization. You know, what do they offer the worker? You know, so if you don't understand these concepts and you move in head up, you know, the movement is gone.
Moving forward, the theme of this particular training, which is the 21st in its series, has to do with labor and human rights in a shrinking democratic space. There's been a lot of conversation as regards this trend. What more do you have to say?
Well, the issue, labor right is human right, and that is why it was from there that we drew our strength. It's like when people try to outlaw the issue of strike in some areas. You know, the issue of strike, we must understand it from what it is. It has to do with the right to work and the right to say, I will not work. It's a fundamental right. So when people come under the law to say certain sections, you know, cannot go on strike, you can't tell somebody who woke up in the morning to say, I will not work today, that he must work. That one is now slave labor. So it is important that we internalize this. We equally see human rights and labor rights, you know, as working together and as a way of saving the working people. The very moment you gain that labor right and you gain human right, then we can fight for our freedom. We can fight for equality, we can fight for the right of the worker, which by extension, has to do with the right of the citizen. So I don't think there's more to say that the topic, the theme is apt. And the very moment you start seeing abuse of human rights, you see the abuse of labor rights. If you check in the country, even during the military era, that the human rights were being trampled upon, you discover that it was more on labor rights. You can hardly say anybody that was in jail more than maybe the labor people. You can, whether you are talking of Gani Fayami, you see the number. He didn't spend the number of years Kokori and Dabibi spent. So this to go, side by side. So by extension, labor right is human right, and abuse of any affects the people, and the people are the people involved, whether they are workers or they are ordinary citizens. So that's why labor has to be interested on abuse of human rights.
Talking about labor rights,
having a free and active civic space that is free and not victimized is an illusion. There has never been a time the civic space is free and active. It is fought for. From colonial days to this moment, whether military or civilian. However, you can have benevolent civilian government. You can have benevolent military government. But in all instances, the civic space cannot be open. It cannot be totally wide. But at the moment, there is no strike or protest we organize since I became NLC president that they have not said you can't do it. None. The one of National Assembly, they even close gate, they say you cannot enter. Strike. The one before the last DGDSS stage, he said, Ajaero, if you come out tomorrow, you have a date with history. I say we will come out. And we came out. So freedom is not given. And that's the summary of your questions. Freedom is not given, it's taken. And especially when you are not talking of your own freedom, but the freedom of the mass, of the people you are representing. I can have some privileges as NLC president, but what happens to the ordinary worker there? We came here now. What of the pensioners that have not been paid? Those pensioners are not active workers, and they can no longer log gate. They can never, if they can't go on strike again. So if you don't fight for them, what will be of them? So those are the issues that made some of us to step out. Even when you see some shy unionists, that can't talk, by the time you see the fate of your members, you have to step out. So we continue to fight it. The civil space cannot be open. Even the Shagari government, as much as it tried, it wasn't open. Babangida government tried to bring a military benevolence. In fact, even I will tell you that when he introduced 100 naira, 120 naira minimum wage, it was not through a fight. He spoke with Pascal and he gave it. He gave NLC bosses. He did that. But that government was not, the civic space was still not open. So they don't give you that civic space until you fight for it. So, and we are not living under any illusion that the civic space will be open. Never, far from it. However, the second coming of Buhari, I think he tried to use it to correct what he did during his first coming. His first coming, he couldn't even sneeze, couldn't talk. But when he came, I can tell you that throughout this COVID-19 era, he insisted that no worker should be sacked. He insisted. And even he was sending money to states to pay workers' salary. Before he left, some sectors in the public service, some he granted them 40%, 20% increases. And then he extended some retirement age to 65 and all that. So I think he was trying to use it to correct what he did as a military dictator, full-blown military dictator. So, and it wasn't like the civic space was totally open, but at least, you know, people were allowed to express their views. Whether their views were not, and whether their views were equally taken into consideration is another thing, you know. But I thought he was so conscious about workers' rights during his second coming. During
the training opening session of the 21st Rain School, there was this conversation you had about the 1999 Constitution Amendment. Can you tell us what is your position as regards the Constitution Amendment, especially as it regards to labor laws and where minimum wage would stand, if it's going to be in the exclusive list or not?
Well, I think there are a lot of issues around this. It borders on citizenship. Is the person in Abia a citizen of Nigeria? Is the person in Sokoto a citizen of Nigeria? Especially citizen by birth, because there are citizens by birth, by registration, and whatever. It talks of the provision of the law. So if the answer is yes, then should there be discrimination between one citizen and the other? Even in terms of providing a basic platform for them now to exercise their right, should they operate under different constitution? If the level 4, the requirement for level 4 salary is CRUSAT in Sokoto, shouldn't it be the same thing in Akwa Ibom? I'm talking of the basic things that you need. Now, the concept of equal work for equal pay, which is equally a constitutional provision, no discrimination based on gender or place of birth or whatever. Are we practicing it? Are we now trying to ask every state to have their own constitution? This is very vital, so that they can operate their constitution. You know, so are we equally asking states in terms of resources, you know, to manage what they have, to pay their workers? It's important in terms of resource control that every state, if a state A is paying 20,000 to their workers, another state is paying 50,000. Now, a state that has much resources can pay 100,000. So that state should not send money to the national. Now, if you are talking of the federating unit, where people send money to the national, is there anything common? And that was why we brought in the issue of I'm elected from a constituency in Imo. Somebody is elected from a constituency in Sokoto, someone from Ondo. And despite the viability of our constituencies, we are being paid the same thing at the national. Is it right? If the answer is yes, because we are all parliamentarians, then if I'm a clerk in Imo State, I should earn the same thing with the clerk in Sokoto and Meduguri in Akwa Ibom. Basic, since we are now relating it to availability of funds and resource of that state. Now, if you do that, you have provided the citizen right that a citizen of Nigeria should not earn less than this as a citizen. But on the basis of the resource in that state, you can pay them A, B, C, D. You know, and that is what is happening now. Now, you bring this, the devolution of powers, you can take it further from what is happening now. You see bad roads. You know, you see the issue of electricity. The 2023 Electricity Act deregulated the power sector. States are now having regulatory commissions, even when they don't have generating stations, even when they don't have distribution stations. But everybody is asking for power. So you now have federal regulatory commission, you have state regulatory commission, and then you have jurisdictional overlap. Now, a worker from in Akwa Ibom who is working for custom will earn like the worker in Meduguri, worker in Sokoto, but he's working in Akwa Ibom. He's earning federal salary. The one in the state here, the governor is supposed to legislate. the two individuals are from the same state. You know, so that's the challenge we have. If you are talking of a kind of a system of government that power has been deregulated and then power has gone to the states, you can equally say, okay, every state should now contribute 20 naira to the national. If that is what they're asking for, fine, but you don't do it half and half. You know, you state A, pay workers whatever you like. You state B, pay workers whatever you like. You know, so I think that, and even we still have national character. We have national spirit. You know, if you are employing in the federal civil service, you have allocation in all the states, you know, to make sure that we cover all the states. And when it comes to salary administration, you say anything where you like. And they went further to say they equally have to state ministries of labor, state courts, you know. So the judgment you are going to have in state A, is it what you are going to have in state B? Are we going to maintain the same judicial system? So those are issues and complications. So why would the person in National Assembly whose state doesn't have money collect the same thing as the person whose state has money? Why would the governor whose state doesn't have money collect the same salary? Why would they even get security vote? All these issues are important so that we maintain the issue of citizenship. A citizen of Nigeria, what is he entitled to? What are his rights and benefits? You know, so I think that was the basis for us to put that in perspective and make sure that the laws are synchronized so that Nigerians can come out to say they are Nigerians.
Thank you very much for your time.
God bless you.
And that's all we can take on today's edition of the program. Join us next week for a fresh edition of the show. I am Sharon Ijason. Thanks for watching, and remember that labor creates wealth.